I have recently commented about priorities with 2 videos in this space. Today brings round 3 on this topic with a focus on 2 subjects. 1. Plastics, about which I produced an earlier video in this space, and 2. Capturing energy via photovoltaic cells and wind turbines. My interest in the latter topic peaked when I lived off-grid for more than a decade, first in rural southwestern New Mexico, and then in Belize, Central America. An article at phys.org on March 7, 2025 is titled, "Scientists Urge Inclusion of Plastics in Climate Action Plans." Here's the lead. Quote, "Scientists from RMIT University are calling for countries to include carbon emissions from plastic production and waste in their climate action plans." RMIT is the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, a public university in Melbourne, Australia. Quote, "More than 90% of Paris Agreement signatory countries ignore plastics within their national determined contribution plans, creating a major gap in climate mitigation efforts," the team says. The call, "Time to Count Plastics in Climate Action," published in Science, comes during the early days of U.S. President Donald Trump's second term. He has made a flurry of executive orders, including to withdraw the U.S. from the Paris Agreement and ban the government's purchase of paper straws." End quote. Let's unpack these 2 short paragraphs. First, ignoring plastics is clearly a terrible idea. That 90% of Paris Agreement signatory countries continue to ignore plastics is a stunningly poor approach. That takes us to another bad idea. Donald Trump is president of anything, much less a country with a large economy and nuclear weapons. That he is banning the government's purchase of paper straws is no surprise, of course. This executive order is consistent with his life as president to date, in which he has focused on further enriching the financially wealthy at the expense of the masses. Speaking of Donald Trump, who is an avid golfer, ZME Science published an article on February 24, 2025, titled, "Golf Courses Use More Land Globally Than Solar or Wind Energy." The subhead tells the story. Quote, "While golf remains a pastime for the affluent, occupying enormous tracts of valuable land globally, renewable energy projects face resistance due to limited available space." End quote. The first paragraph of the story at ZME Science is enough to turn your stomach. You've been warned. Quote, "The land use of renewable energy is often criticized in public and political debates. However, a new study shows that something as frivolous as golf courses use up more land globally than solar or wind energy. Golf courses, which often serve a small number of affluent people, are also terrible for the environment and use up a lot of water and resources." End quote. Within a section titled "Competition for Space," we read the following, quote, "The lush greenery you see on golf courses is a well-maintained lie. Golf courses use enormous amounts of water, sometimes in regions already facing shortages. Maintaining that flawless grass also means heavy reliance on fertilizers and pesticides, which seep into local waterways, harming wildlife and polluting ecosystems. To make it even worse, golf courses are apparently competing with renewable energy for space. Every acre we allocate to one use is an acre less for another. Currently, more than 38,400 golf courses span the globe, occupying vast stretches of valuable land. Surprisingly, researchers from Germany's Forschungszentrum Jülich found that countries, especially richer countries like the US, the UK, and Canada, dedicate far more land to golf courses than to solar farms or wind turbines. Let's put this into perspective. If you take the golf courses in just the top 10 golfing countries and convert them into renewable energy, you'd get an extra 842 gigawatts of solar or 659 gigawatts of wind capacity. And to put that into perspective, that's more than the entire quantity of renewable energy these countries produce and are forecast to have for a few years." End quote. I know. Civilization is a heat engine based on 5 peer-reviewed papers by Professor Tim Garrett. However, has it ever occurred to the people destroying habitat for living organisms to create a golf course? Or to the journalists writing about these actions that the set of living arrangements can be made fairer than it currently is? Has it ever occurred to these people that distractions for the wealthy are disasters for the rest of us? Some examples from the story at ZME Science indicate the possibilities. Quote, replacing golf courses with something more useful isn't a new idea. It's already happening in some areas. In Japan's Hyogo Prefecture, an entire golf course now hosts 260,000 solar panels generating 125 gigawatt hours annually. Meanwhile, in South Korea, screen golf, indoor simulated golfing experiences, provide a popular space-efficient alternative to traditional courses. End quote. I realize screen golf is a poor substitute for the real deal. In my limited experience, an old quote about golf is fitting. Quote, golf is a good walk spoiled. End quote. Winston Churchill correctly described the game. Quote, golf is a game whose aim is to hit a very small ball into an even smaller hole with weapons singularly ill-designed for the purpose. End quote. When I lived in Tucson, having captured the dream of a professor's life, I played the occasional round of golf. I was especially fond of playing on hot summer days, as youngsters in golf carts followed me around the course, unsuccessfully trying to sell me water. The price for playing 18 holes was very low once the temperature exceeded 38°C. Once I played a decent couple of rounds, I could no longer enjoy playing. Every error was a reminder of the recent times I made few errors. Golf became, quote, a good walk spoiled, end quote. When I left Tucson, I left my golfing equipment behind. Considering that was more than 15 years ago, I doubt I'll make a comeback.